will be Dr. Thomas Weber from Schneider Electric, Germany, that actually already in 1989 he got the diploma from Darmstadt. From 1996 to 2001 he worked in Mannheim Head Technical Calculations Corporation. From 2001 to 2003 in Alstom Energy Technique, and he was a project leader in power system in Frankfurt. And from 2004 to 2010 in Areva, and Energetechnik Frankfurt, head of department, and since 2011 works with the Schneider Electric Frankfurt, head of department. And he will tell us about the global energy outlook. It's good to see a little bit around, not only be close in our Israeli market. So Dr. Thomas Weber, the floor is yours.
So, thanks a lot. So before I start, first of all, thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to be here. And so far, I was asked to tell you something about the global energy outlook. And before I begin, I would thank especially my colleagues from Schneider Electric and especially Rami Finkler for his support for the thousands questions I had to him. So thanks a lot. My ABB colleague I thank for the introduction, more or less also for Schneider, so I have no additional slide for our very small $20 billion or euro group all over the world. So, and to follow to the next one, I have to bring you kind regards from the German bodies who are telling me to give you this presentation. First of all, the colleagues coming from Eurel, sitting in Brussels, and the ETG or the VDE located in Berlin, where I bring kind regards to all of you. So I was asked for the global energy outlook, and the advantage of a keynote speaker is that he gets a title, but what he really brings as slides is more or less his own business. And so I also used to stretch the word global a little bit and focus it from global to European to German. And I learned in the keynotes in the beginning and that you in Israel are now beginning to start a revolution. And I can tell you, we are in Germany, we are meanwhile within this revolution, and I think so I could bring some interesting remarks. And especially I would like to ask you to follow the good things we have done or we have reached, and more, don't do the mistakes we have done and we are in process to do. So first of all, let's have a look on global views. And the most interesting thing is that in Europe we have fixed the so-called 20-20-20 rules, so that we want to have a reduction of greenhouse gases reduced by 20% in the year 2020. We have 20% share of renewables in 2020, and we want to reduce our energy consumption also by 20%. So the number 20 is a very important one. And one of the numbers where I personally, as a pure engineer, have a little problem is if someone tells me to reduce something between 80 and 95%, it's more or less nearly to nothing. And that's very interesting how things can be followed up for that. If we go to the greenhouse gas emission and compare the 1990 and the 2010 values, then you will find a lot of countries here, starting China, US, India, Russia, and so on, and some of the European countries here, Germany, UK, and so on. And if you see the greenhouse gas development, if you put together the 4 first countries, you have 80% of the whole number. So this means, vice versa, if you stop every energy production in, let's say, total Europe, you can nearly cover what happened in the countries at the first 4 positions. So this may make a feeling how complicated this construction is at the very end. So where do we go in global generation from today in the next future? So here are 3 scenarios for 2035, and I want to highlight only some of these information. So first of all, we can see that we start from a level of around 20 and go more or less minimum 50% more, up to 100% more. And who shall cover that? So first of all, in Germany, we don't like coal anymore. We have loved it for 150 years. Now no one loves coal anymore. And if you see worldwide, we see the coal will not reduce only in one scenario, but more or less it will be a very important base. Additionally, nuclear power, which is also used even in future. In Germany, we don't like it either, so we stop it, or we like to stop it. And what also is important, a very big increase of the whole is given by regeneratives. So now let's come for that part down to Europe. And if we start with actual values and just have a look on the different colors, then we see that the aim is to have, in a scenario which is high renewable and in contrast to low renewable, that we have in a high renewable in 2050, we have no longer any nuclear, but our production of energy shall be done by the renewables. So a big task for whole Europe. If you see the same in the installed power capacities in the generators, we have first to follow the blue arrow here, which means the peak load. And if you compare the peak load with the installed generation power, then you will find out that in this high renewable scenario, we have a tremendous higher installed power capacity in contrast to the load. And this, of course, comes from the nature of the regeneratives, the renewables. And so in that case, we have in Germany, of course, mostly wind, but we also have a lot of photovoltaic installation. So now let's have a look about wind. If you see globally installed wind power, you first see that starting from 2005 up to 2010, we have more or less roughly an increase by a factor of 4, which is a huge amount of installed power. And mainly the European community, also a part is done in North America, but China is more or less exploding in installation of wind power. So for example, they have 1 year, they installed the whole wind power we have installed in Germany for 20 years. So, but the country is a little bit bigger than ours. And so if you have here, for 2011, you see China has the main part, then US, India, Germany is on position number 4, and then Canada, Great Britain, Spain, Italy, France, Sweden, so a lot of European countries who install a lot of wind energy. If we change to the other interesting part, the photovoltaic, then you see that from 2005 to 2011, mainly it was driven by the European community, and not all of our countries are really so sunny as yours here. And so the effectiveness of the installation of photovoltaic is in some part really questionable, but we do. So just following these few numbers, we go down to what we call in Germany Energiewende, the change of energy, which is tremendously focused on going out of the nuclear power. And first, let's have a very small look on the system we have here. In general, we have transmission system operators, in total 4, and we have a grid. The supergrid is built by 400 and 220 kilovolts. And what is very interesting, we have, beside of our 4 TSOs, we have approximately 700 distribution system operators, and I learned in a discussion here that in Israel it's a little bit different to that. And so all of them have to follow the whole process, and it's a lot of legal and commercial business which appears. So the story behind this decision is not starting after the Fukushima catastrophe. It more or less was starting after the Chernobyl part, so which is a lot of years before. And even in around 2000, there have been some acts where the government decides to reduce and in long term to go out of the nuclear power. And as soon as the Fukushima catastrophe occurs, then the decision was not to go out slowly, but to go out fast, rapidly. So here, some goals and milestones, and if you compare with the European goals, you will find, for example, just one example, the share of energy generation by renewables. Here you find 2011, we like to have 20%. If you have a little bit in mind what I told you about the European goals for 2020, the 20%, so in Germany our goal is a little bit higher, and so is the rest of the story. Up to 2050 we like to have 80% of renewables, which is, for me honestly, minimum a hard road to go. So just here to see that behind of all these decisions there is a lot of legal support, and for us as pure technical guys it's sometimes very hard to follow, because if you make some calculations, some studies based on different rules and connection rules and laws, then you bring out such a study and within some months or weeks or not years, the rules are changing. And so that's also for us a very interesting and challenging time. So the next some slides are not to be followed in very details, just to give you an impression that we try to give in this very short term between today and 2022, where all of the nuclear power plants shall be cut off of the system, that all of these tasks to be done, what in your revolution just is starting, is willing to be done within 9 or 10 years. So it's more or less incredible. So we have not only the demand question, we have also the question about the power plants. So you have to imagine, in your country, I learned that you have the installation of a lot of power plants, also independent power plants, power producers. We have problems with our new power plants because they shall be built as reserve power plants. And with a reserve power plant, you normally cannot earn any money, and so most of these projects are stopped. Otherwise, the nuclear power plants have to be stopped by law. No one wants to have coal anymore. Oil is also not so really wished. And so at the very end, we are dealing just with photovoltaics and with wind. And this generates a lot of problems in terms of stability and so on. So there are some key indices who are measured, and where do we stand in the feeling of the companies, of the people. And the first number was comparing between 2010 and 11. If you see climate and environment, so there is the feeling that because of this change of energy, situation improved. If we go to the economical view, it's more or less starting from a catastrophic way, and 58% acceptance is also not really good. If we go to system reliability, we start from a value where we said we come from 116%, so everyone thinks we are more than reliable in our system. And up to now we have decreased down to 91%. This means also a very good value, but I personally, also as a technical guy, I fear that we are running down a hill, and if necessary we cannot stop the train. The acceptance of the change of energy is now at a value of 76%, and I can tell you the value will decrease because we are forced to pay more and more for our energy. So I expect that this value will decrease in the next year. And what happens in terms of innovation, there we increase, because an increase from 79 to 86% is a good value, but why it is yellow and not green? because the limit for the green light is given to 90%. So, but I expect that in the next years the innovation part will increase. So what do we have managed in our country? We have managed really 99.9% of regenerative power as a part of the electrical supply. So we have really fulfilled the first goal, but there are also others to follow. So if we see at 2050 with 80%. So a comparison between the installed capacity and what comes out on energy, and is that if we compare the nuclear part, then you have 7% of the installed capacity is nuclear, but 18% of the produced megawatt hours coming out of these plants. And on the other hand, we have wind, where we have 17%, producing only 8% of our energy. And the critical path is the photovoltaic, where we have 15% and producing just 3%. So here you can imagine what happens if you start with quitting such energy plants and going just to this volatile energy production. So where do we have our energy from? So if you compare, the big gray part is all what would we have from thermal base, and we are just discussing about this small part here. So this means wind is the most part. We have an increasing part of biomass, which is in so far a good energy source because you can control it relatively fine. And we have a part of water, which is more or less fixed. There is only a reasonable level of that. And photovoltaic is also increasing. So again, some parts here. What happens in wind and photovoltaic? We have nowadays in 2011 nearly 30 gigawatt installed wind power. And from year to year, we have more or less, let's say, approximately 2 gigawatt installed power. In photovoltaic, we see here an explosion because we start with around 2 gigawatt and now we have around 25. And you see here on the right side that we have installed in the last 2 years, or in these 2 years, really a tremendous part of photovoltaic. And most of that is installed in the low voltage systems and not in bigger parks. So, and here I have the results of a study, and because I personally have problems with such an amount of zeros, and because the difference between the German understanding of billion and the English-speaking billion. So our billion has 3 zeros less than our billion has 3 zeros more than the English zeros. And so I decided to write down here the real number of zeros. And this means a huge amount of money which shall be invested till 2030. And I'm not absolutely sure if this is a reasonable solution to take such an amount of money. So how can we reach this? And as already said by other speakers, the smart grids is one of the door openers for that. And smart grids mostly come first in with very wonderful slides. And so I found from ETG this wonderful top-down structure where we have our generation structure as we know since nearly 100 years. And if we go to smart grids, then we find on each and every place some installation of power in the medium voltage, in the low voltage system. And this generates also problems where we come in the next slides too. So besides the pure, let's say, technical parts dealing with the real high power is added by things like e-mobility, definition of smart customer at home. We have some solutions for gateway smart meters. We will hear some additional information about that. And one part, which is the storage, which I'm sorry not to follow in detail because time is too less to tell something about everything here. So in this figure, we see, we try to focus on which developments can help in the near future, which potentials we have, and how near we are in the real market. And here you can see the most critical paths are in that area, so where we mostly deal with storage, where we don't have any solution up to now, or any reasonable solution. On the right side, we have some management systems, and we also have, for example, a controllable medium to low voltage transformer, which we hoped that will help a little bit. So here I have not translated this slide because I just want to focus on, again, on this 10 years roadmap, where we have such a high amount of things to do, from definition of standards, of doing pilots, of automation of systems, and to take, last but not least, the demand side management. And if you have all these things to do, and these are not small tasks, my personal opinion is that the 2022 goal is minimum critical. So here, just a slide, and this, I'm ready in 5 minutes. So here, one slide from my Schneider colleagues, at which points we all have to provide solutions. It's not only the power generation, it's also for the industry. We have to connect the renewables. We have to see for the utilities. Of course, infrastructure for buildings is of interest, and this is a thing where I can tell you a little bit more tomorrow in another session, where we have a special solution for the installation of smart kiosk between the medium and the low voltage part. Now, for me, as technical guy, a little bit to reality. So, how had we come to regeneratives in Germany? It starts with some very small windmills, and they have been installed, and the power system operator says, okay, if there's any problem, I will kick you off. And then we have some escalation. In the northern part of Germany, where it's a lot of wind, we installed a lot of wind generation, and first in that part, the power flow does not go into the low voltage part or in the medium voltage part, but comes up from the medium voltage part in the high voltage part. And this, at that time, everyone sees this is a problem of the north, and all the rest of Germany has no problem with that. And in an escalation step number 2, we have this problem all over Germany with the increase of regenerative power, as I have showed you in the slides before. So if you go to photovoltaic, we now have most of our installed power in the low voltage part. In the medium voltage, we have some megawatt parks, but we also have some parks in photovoltaics nowadays between 20 and 60 megawatts going to the 110 kV level. In wind, we have single wind generators in the megawatt range, or 2 or 3 of them. In the high voltage level, we have wind farms up to 30, 40, also 50 megawatts, and bigger ones up to gigawatt. We have to go up to the 400 kV level, but this is offshore, where we actually fight against time, against money, against the banks, against everything. So this is a very critical part. But of course, if it runs, we are talking about gigawatts. If you take the rest, biogas or waste, we have small parts in the low voltage, and actually we have increasing plant numbers in the medium voltage range in the medium voltage level. So this is a generating example for a certain period of time. If you see in blue, this is the generation of wind, and if you go to the yellow curves, this is the photovoltaic, where we can see that this is not really something where we have a leveled load curve which can be followed over a long time. So we have to use some storages, some backup generators and so on. So now a real example in very simple figures. We have here a medium voltage system, 2 rings, a blue one and a red one, and here we have an expansion area for a wind farm. And inside of this wind farm, the green spots are the locations for the windmills. And if you install that, that would be a solution where a normal power system planner would say, okay, this is okay. Or if you like to do it on a 110 kV, it would also be okay. And now, in the next slide, you see what we do wrong in our planning. This is the reality. Why that? Because the laws, and I urgently would ask you to do it in a better way in your country, that every single connector asks to be connected, and every single project has to be seen as single only for that. So every of these 8 wind generators here is connected with an own procedure. And my proposal is to follow more or less that, or that solution which I would propose. So this is one of the fields where we have to improve in our country. That is part of a study where you can see another big problem we have, the voltage increase. So if you have installed the photovoltaic and the wind, and there is no generation, in contrast to the existing generation, you have a big voltage increase problem. So if you have here a few on the dark red spots, which is in that area and in that area, you can just follow it by addition of a big substation where you see the result here. So we changed from red to green, and to install another substation where also this is improved. So in so far, this is for a very small system, one of the 700 distribution system operators. So we have here a lot of problems to solve step by step, and every solution of such a problem costs a lot of money. So now, a little bit of outlook and future needs for success. There has to be a strategy. So if you start such a revolution, you have to be a strategy which is a little bit more than just numbers 20, but to go into system detail. Then you have to be clear that the government gives you clear rules for the realization in technical terms. And even that means that there is intensive collaboration necessary between the government and the technical bodies. Then, if there are connection rules, they have to be defined or adapted in terms of installation of the renewables. And you have also defined what kind of role you have for the different power plants. In terms of nuclear, for us it's clear, they will get cut off. But what about gas? What about coal? Are there reserve plants, needed reserve plants? And if they are needed, then they also should be in the position to be able to earn some money. And what for me is very important, if you do that, all of the partners have to go to one desk and to find common solutions, because otherwise you will be lost in time and lost in legal discussions, and that's not leading to a solution. So, also this means clear strategic power system expansion to reach the given technical commercial goals. And I wish you good success in your country to do that. And if there are any questions to that, I'll be here tomorrow and today, of course, and would be happy to some discussions. So thanks a lot.
Thank you to Dr. Weber. We accept all your recommendations, except one. We have a problem with collaboration. When the Jewish people, they say that 2 people have three ideas, so it's difficult to collaborate with 3 ideas between 2 people, but except that, we accept everything.
Yeah, I can sing in this chorus also, though I know that.
Okay, thank you.